Girl falls for Lakeside boy, only to discover he's the same boy who disappeared over 20 years ago.
Hello and welcome to 80s Love Stories, where I, your favorite narrator, Christopher, bring you an exciting love story straight from the unforgettable 1980s. Get ready for a journey full of nostalgia and incredible twists. Today's story is truly remarkable, with an ending that's sure to touch your heart and leave you amazed. So, stay with me until the very last moment. I hope this experience is unforgettable for you, and may God bless you and your family. Now, let's get started. The worn cassette of the police's Synchronicity clicked to a stop as Claire Henderson pulled her yellow Volkswagen Beetle into the gravel driveway of her grandmother's lake house. The late June sun hung low over the water, casting long shadows through the pine trees that had somehow grown taller in the 5 years since her last visit. Or maybe everything just looked different now that Gran was gone. Claire killed the engine and sat there, her hand still gripping the steering wheel. The house looked smaller than she remembered, a weathered 2-story cabin with faded blue paint and white trim that needed touching up. The flower boxes Gran had always kept overflowing with geraniums sat empty beneath the windows, their wood cracking from neglect. "Home, sweet home," she muttered, grabbing her denim jacket from the passenger seat. Her parents thought sending her here for the summer would help her process everything, as if 3 months in the middle of nowhere could fix the fact that the person who understood her best in the world was gone. The screen door creaked as Claire stepped inside, carrying the scent of dust and memories. Everything was exactly as Gran had left it. The collection of antique teacups in the corner cabinet, the faded photos on the walls, even the half-finished crossword puzzle on the coffee table. Claire dropped her backpack and headed straight for the kitchen, where she knew she'd find the key to the boat dock in the ceramic frog by the sink. Some habits died hard. The wooden dock swayed gently under her feet as she walked to its edge, her white keds already collecting splinters. The lake stretched out before her, its surface painted in oranges and pinks from the setting sun. This was where she and Gran had spent countless summer evenings, talking about everything and nothing while they waited for the stars to appear. "I miss you," Claire whispered to the water, wrapping her arms around herself despite the warm evening air. The gentle lap of waves against the dock posts was her only answer, until it wasn't. A splash from somewhere to her left broke the stillness, followed by the distinctive sound of water being cut by steady strokes. Claire turned to see a figure swimming parallel to the shoreline, moving with confident grace through the dying light. As she watched, the swimmer changed course, heading toward her dock. Claire took a step back, suddenly aware of how isolated she was, but curiosity kept her rooted in place as the figure drew closer. When he was about 20 feet out, he stopped and treaded water, and Claire found herself looking into the most striking green eyes she'd ever seen. "You must be Claire," the swimmer said, pushing wet dark hair back from his forehead. His smile was disarming, genuine in a way that made her forget to be suspicious about how he knew her name. "I'm Lucas. I was wondering when you'd show up." Claire raised an eyebrow, trying to maintain her guard despite the flutter in her stomach. "How did you—" "Small town," he interrupted with a small laugh. "News travels fast, especially when it involves the Henderson lake house finally having life in it again." He swam closer to the dock, but maintained a respectful distance. "Plus, I knew your grandmother." The mention of Gran sent a sharp pain through Claire's chest, but there was something in Lucas's tone, a gentleness, a shared understanding, that made it hurt a little less. "You did." He nodded, and for a moment, something flickered across his face, an emotion Claire couldn't quite read. "She used to let me use this dock sometimes. Said the sunset looked better from here than anywhere else on the lake." He glanced at the horizon, where the sun was now barely visible above the tree line. She wasn't wrong. Claire found herself following his gaze, and for the first time since arriving, she felt something other than grief, a spark of curiosity, maybe even hope. When she looked back, Lucas had moved to the dock's ladder. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, one hand on the rung. Water droplets caught the fading light, making his skin seem to glow. He wore red swim trunks that might have been fashionable a few years ago, and a simple silver chain around his neck caught the light. Claire hesitated for just a moment before nodding. As Lucas pulled himself up onto the dock, She noticed he moved with an easy grace that seemed almost out of place, like he belonged more to the water than to land. He sat down at the edge, letting his feet dangle in the lake, and patted the space beside him. "I promise I don't bite," he said with that same disarming smile. "And I've got a feeling you could use someone to talk to who isn't trying to fix everything." Claire surprised herself by sitting down next to him, keeping a careful foot of space between them. The wood was still warm from the day's sun, and the air smelled of pine needles and lake water. "You seem pretty sure about that," Lucas shrugged, his eyes on the horizon where the first stars were beginning to appear. "Let's just say I know something about loss." He glanced at her sideways, and in the growing darkness, his eyes seemed to hold secrets. "And about how sometimes the best thing isn't trying to fix it, but just having someone who'll sit with you while you figure it out yourself." They sat in companionable silence as the sun disappeared completely and the first fireflies began to dance over the water. The evening air grew cooler, but Claire barely noticed. There was something about Lucas that made her feel both unsettled and completely at ease, like she'd known him forever, and yet didn't know him at all. I should go," Lucas said finally, standing up with that same fluid grace. Water dripped from his shorts onto the dock, forming small dark circles that seemed almost black in the twilight. "But I'm usually around here in the evenings, if you ever want company." Before Claire could respond, he dove back into the lake with barely a splash. She watched his form cut through the water, moving away from the dock with strong, sure strokes. Just before he disappeared into the growing darkness, he turned and waved. Claire stayed on the dock long after Lucas had vanished, watching the stars emerge one by one. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. "The lake keeps its own kind of time, sweetheart. And sometimes it gives us exactly what we need, exactly when we need it." As she finally stood to head back to the house, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to Lucas than just a friendly local swimmer. The way he moved through the water, the things he knew about her grandmother, that look in his eyes when he spoke of loss, it all added up to something just beyond her grasp. But for the first time since Gran's funeral, Claire felt truly curious about something. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what she needed. When she reached the house, she noticed something on the porch that hadn't been there before. A small piece of driftwood, smoothed by the lake's waters, with a single word carved into its surface. "Welcome." Claire picked it up, running her fingers over the rough letters. She looked back toward the lake, now invisible in the darkness, and smiled despite herself. Summer, it seemed, might not be so lonely after all. The bell above Miller's ice cream parlor jangled as Claire pushed through the door, the blast of air conditioning a welcome relief from the July heat. The place was a perfect slice of small-town Americana, checkered floor tiles, red vinyl booths, and a gleaming chrome counter with rotating stools. A Cyndi Lauper song played softly from the jukebox in the corner. "You must be Claire Henderson," called a woman from behind the counter. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes and perfectly styled hair. Her name tag read, "Betty." "I was hoping you'd stop by. Your grandmother mentioned you might be looking for a summer job." Claire blinked in surprise. "She did. Just a few weeks before—" Betty trailed off, then brightened. "Well, we could use the help, especially with the midnight movies starting up at the Starview Drive-In. We get swamped on those nights." 20 minutes later, Claire was wearing a pink striped apron and learning how to operate the soft-serve machine. As she worked, she couldn't help but wonder about Gran planning this for her. It was exactly the kind of thing she would do, arranging little pieces of Claire's life, even after she was gone. The afternoon rush brought a parade of locals, many who claimed to remember Claire from previous summers. She nodded politely, though most faces were unfamiliar. During a lull, she asked Betty about Lucas. The change in Betty's expression was subtle but unmistakable. "Lucas?" She busied herself wiping down the already clean counter. "Don't know any Lucas around here, honey. Unless you mean old Mister. Lucas who runs the hardware store." "No, this Lucas is young, maybe 19, dark hair, green eyes. He said he knew my grandmother." Betty shook her head, but something in her manner seemed forced. "Can't say that I do, but then, I don't know everyone who comes through in the summer." Before Claire could press further, the door chimed again. A girl about Claire's age bounced in, her bleached blonde hair teased impressively high and adorned with neon scrunchies. She wore acid-washed jeans and a cropped Madonna-style top. "You're Claire," she exclaimed. "I'm Mindy. We have got to do something about this." She gestured to Claire's simple ponytail and t-shirt. "Mall trip. Tomorrow. Non-negotiable." And that's how Claire found herself at the Riverside Mall the next day, surrounded by shopping bags from the Limited and Claire's boutique. Mindy proved to be a whirlwind of energy and gossip, filling Claire in on every detail of local life, while they browsed racks of neon clothing and chunky jewelry. So then Jenny told Tommy that Ashley said... Mindy stopped mid-sentence as they passed the record bar. "Oh my God, look who it is! Jason Turner. Total dreamboat, right?" Claire followed her gaze to a tall boy with perfectly feathered hair, wearing a Letterman jacket despite the summer heat. He was flipping through records with two other guys who shared his preppy look. "He's been asking about you," Mindy continued, "ever since he heard someone was staying at the old Henderson place." "The old Henderson place?" Claire frowned. "People talk about it like it's haunted?" Mindy laughed, then stopped when she saw Claire's expression. "Oh, I didn't mean, it's just, after what happened. The accident." "What accident?" But Jason had noticed them and was heading over, his friends in tow. "Hey," he said, flashing perfect teeth, "you must be Claire. We're heading to the arcade. Want to join?" Claire was about to decline when she caught sight of something that made her heart skip. Through the mall's glass ceiling, she saw a familiar figure on the roof, Lucas, standing at the edge, looking down at her. But when she blinked, he was gone. "Earth to Claire." Mindy waved a hand in front of her face. "Sorry, I just thought I saw someone I knew." "Come on," Jason said. "I'll teach you the secrets of Dragon's Lair, unless you're scared of getting beaten." The arcade was a cave of neon lights and electronic beeps. Claire found herself actually having fun, even if her mind kept wandering to Lucas and the strange reaction her questions about him had gotten. Between games, she caught snippets of conversation between Jason and his friends. "Did you hear they're dredging the lake next week? Just the north end, near the old boathouse." About time. After what they found last month. They clammed up when they noticed her listening. Jason quickly suggested they head to the food court for Orange Julius, but Claire begged off, claiming a headache. She needed to think. The sun was setting as she drove home in her Beetle, a new mixtape Mindy had made her playing on the stereo. When she pulled up to the house, she noticed something on the porch swing, a stack of vinyl records tied with twine. On top was Tears for Fears, the Hurting album, and beneath it, records from the 60s, the Ronettes, the Shangri-Las, Bobby Vinton. A note was tucked into the first album, "Music helps. Trust me." Claire carried the records inside, her mind spinning. The 60s albums were all in pristine condition, despite being over 20 years old. As she pulled out the Bobby Vinton record, a newspaper clipping fluttered to the floor. It was yellowed with age. Dated August 1963, local teen still missing after lake accident. The photo showed a boy with dark hair and striking eyes, standing on a dock at sunset. He wore a silver chain around his neck. Claire's hands trembled as she read the caption, "Lucas Mitchell, 17, presumed drowned. A splash from the lake made her jump." Through the window, she could see a figure swimming in the dying light, right where she'd first met Lucas. As she watched, he turned and waved, his silver chain glinting in the sunset. Claire's grandmother had always said the lake kept its own kind of time. Now Claire was beginning to understand what she meant, and she was no longer sure if that understanding should thrill or terrify her. The Starview Drive-In's massive screen loomed against the twilight sky as cars filed in for the Saturday night double feature, Risky Business, followed by Valley Girl. Claire sat in her Beetle, surrounded by paper bags from Miller's ice cream parlor, waiting for Mindy to arrive with her latest update on the lake dredging situation. She'd spent the past week trying to make sense of the newspaper clipping, but every lead led to a dead end. The local library's microfiche records for 1963 were temporarily unavailable. The town hall's archives were under renovation. Even Betty at the ice cream parlor changed the subject whenever Claire mentioned the 60s. "Get your fresh rocky road here," Claire called out her window to a passing group of teenagers. She'd volunteered to handle concessions at the drive-in, hoping to overhear something useful. So far, she'd only collected gossip about who was taking who to the upcoming Sadie Hawkins dance at the roller rink. A tap on her passenger window made her jump. It was Lucas, looking impossibly handsome in jeans and a worn leather jacket, his hair slightly damp as always. "You're far from the lake," Claire said as he slid into the seat beside her. The leather jacket should have been dripping, but it was perfectly dry. "I go where the music is," he replied, nodding toward the car's radio where Sweet Dreams by Eurythmics played softly. "Besides, I heard they're showing some good movies tonight." "You heard? From who?" Claire tried to keep her voice casual. "No one seems to know you exist." Lucas's smile flickered. "People see what they want to see." He reached for one of the ice cream bags. "Rocky Road, your grandmother's favorite." "How did you—" "I told you I knew her well." He pulled out a perfectly formed ice cream cone, though Claire was certain she hadn't packed any cones. "She used to tell me about you, the granddaughter who loved music and mysteries and wasn't afraid to chase either." The opening credits began to roll across the massive screen, but Claire barely noticed. "Lucas, I found the newspaper article from 1963 about the drowning." He went still, the ice cream cone hovering halfway to his mouth. For a moment, the only sound was Annie Lennox's voice, singing about sweet dreams and using people. "What do you want to know?" he finally asked. "Everything." "Not yet." His green eyes held that same mysterious depth she'd noticed that first night. "Some stories need the right moment, the right song, the right sunset." He nodded toward something behind her. "And right now you have company." Claire turned to see Jason approaching, carrying a large popcorn and wearing his ever-present Letterman jacket. When she looked back, Lucas was gone, leaving only a perfectly formed ice cream cone melting on her dashboard. "Who were you talking to?" Jason asked, leaning against her car door. "Just thinking out loud." Claire quickly wiped away the ice cream evidence. "Want to join me?" They watched the movie together, but Claire's mind kept drifting to Lucas. Jason was nice enough. He laughed at the right moments, offered commentary on Tom Cruise's dancing, and didn't try any cheesy moves with the old yawn and stretch routine. But he felt ordinary, safe. Like a story with no mystery left to solve. After the first feature, Claire excused herself to use the restroom. In the drive-in's small concrete bathroom building, she found herself staring at her reflection in the spotted mirror. The girl looking back was different from the one who'd arrived at the lake house 2 weeks ago. Mindy's mall makeover had helped, the new layered haircut, the fashionable clothes. But it was more than that. There was a light in her eyes now, a purpose. A movement in the mirror caught her attention. Behind her reflection, she saw a glimpse of another bathroom. Not the drive-in's, but an older one with mint green tiles. A girl in a 60s-style dress was fixing her hair, humming "It's My Party." Their eyes met in the mirror, and Claire recognized her grandmother as a teenager. Claire whirled around, but there was only the drive-in's dingy bathroom. On the wall, however, someone had carved initials into the tile, LM plus EH, Summer 63, EH. Elizabeth Henderson, her grandmother. The revelation hit Claire like a physical force, the way Gran always got quiet when talking about her teenage years, the box of 60s records Claire had found in the attic, the silver chain she'd seen Gran holding sometimes, when she thought no one was watching. Back at her car, Claire found a note tucked under her windshield wiper. Some love's echo across time. "Meet me at Starlight Roller Rink tomorrow night. Bring the records." "Tell us everything okay?" Jason asked when she returned. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just tired," Claire lied, starting her car. "I think I'm going to head home." "Wait, about the Sadie Hawkins dance next week." "I'll let you know," she said quickly, already backing out of her spot. The drive home was a blur of questions. The lake seemed to glow under the moon, and Claire could have sworn she saw 2 figures sitting on her dock, a boy and a girl, their forms ghostly in the midnight light. But when she parked and looked again, there was only the gentle lap of waves against wood. Inside, she pulled out the stack of records Lucas had left her. Hidden in the Bobby Vinton sleeve, she found an old photograph, Two teenagers sat on a dock at sunset, Lucas and her grandmother. They were looking at each other with unmistakable love, unaware of the camera catching their moment. On the back, in her grandmother's familiar handwriting, "The heart knows what time forgets. Summer, 1963. Claire stayed up late into the night, playing the old records and trying to piece together a mystery that seemed to span decades. One thing was becoming clear. Her grandmother and Lucas had been more than friends. But what had really happened that summer? And why did Lucas still look exactly the same? As Claire finally drifted off to sleep, Bobby Vinton's Blue Velvet played softly on the turntable, and she dreamed of summer nights that existed somewhere between past and present, where love stories never really ended. They just waited for the right moment to continue. Tomorrow was the roller rink. Tomorrow she might finally get some answers. But as the song faded out, Claire wasn't sure if she was ready for the truth. About Lucas, about her grandmother, about why some summers echo forever across the surface of a lake that seemed to exist outside of time itself. The Starlight roller rink was a temple of neon and nostalgia, its rainbow lights reflecting off the mirrored disco ball that hung from the ceiling like a mechanical moon. Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time flowed from the speakers as Claire laced up her rental skates, the stack of vintage records sitting beside her on the bench. "You sure you don't want to join us?" Mindy asked, already rolling past in her hot pink skates, her hair adorned with matching fluorescent ribbons. Tommy's brother brought his Atari Portable, and we're having a Pac-Man tournament in the snack bar after couples who skate. Claire shook her head, trying to ignore the knowing look Jason was giving her from the arcade corner, where he was setting a new high score on Gallagher. He'd been not so subtly hanging around Miller's ice cream parlor all week, waiting for an answer about the Sadie Hawkins dance. "I'm meeting someone," Claire said, standing carefully on her skates. Mindy's eyes widened. Not the mystery guy Betty was talking about, the one no one's seen. But Claire was already rolling away, the records clutched to her chest. The rink was crowded with teenagers executing elaborate dance moves on wheels, showing off for each other under the spinning lights. Claire made her way to the far corner, where the illumination was dimmer and the music slightly muffled. Lucas was waiting there, leaning against the wall with that impossible grace of his. He wore dark jeans and a white t-shirt that seemed to belong to another era, and his ever-present silver chain caught the disco ball's light. "You brought them," he said, nodding to the records. "Your grandmother's favorites." "Our deal was answers," Claire replied, trying to keep her balance on the skates. "I brought the records. Now tell me the truth. About you, about Gran, about that summer." Lucas pushed off from the wall, gliding backward with effortless skill. He held out his hand. "Some stories are better shown than told. Skate with me." Claire hesitated, then took his hand. It was cool to the touch, like lake water at sunset. The opening notes of Modern English's "I Melt With You" filled the rink as Lucas led her onto the floor, guiding her through the crowd with fluid movements. "The summer of 1963 was the hottest on record," he began, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "I was 17, working as a lifeguard at the lake. Your grandmother, Elizabeth, used to come to the shore every evening to watch the sunset." They glided past the snack bar, where Mindy and her friends were pretending not to watch. Claire caught a glimpse of Jason, his game forgotten as he stared at her and Lucas. "We fell in love," Lucas continued, spinning Claire gently. "The kind of love that feels like it could stop time. Elizabeth was different from anyone I'd ever met. She understood that the lake had its own magic, its own rules." "What happened the night you disappeared?" Lucas's grip tightened slightly. "There was a storm. Elizabeth and I had planned to meet at midnight, to run away together. Her parents didn't approve. They'd arranged for her to marry someone else, someone with better prospects. I waited at the dock, but she never came." They were skating faster now, the other couples becoming blurs of color and motion. The music seemed to fade away, replaced by the sound of waves and distant thunder. "The lake was angry that night," Lucas said, his green eyes distant with memory. "The waves were high, but I thought I saw Elizabeth's rowboat out in the middle. I swam out to find her." He trailed off as the lights dimmed for couples skate. In the darkness, Claire could have sworn she saw water droplets falling from his hair, But when the lights came back up, he was perfectly dry. Gran's diary said she was late because her parents had locked her in her room, Claire said softly. She tried to climb out the window, but by the time she got to the lake, I was gone. Lucas's smile was tinged with sadness, or so everyone thought. But the lake, it has its own way of preserving things. Love stories, promises, people. You're saying you've been here all this time, in the lake. Time moves differently in deep water, he replied cryptically. Elizabeth understood that, eventually. She'd come to the dock every sunset, play our songs, keep me company. Even after she married, even after she had your mother, she never forgot. They had stopped skating, standing still in the middle of the rink while other couples flowed around them like water around stones. The DJ announced the last couple's Song of the Night, Forever Young, by Alphaville. But why show yourself to me now? Claire asked, her heart pounding. Because Elizabeth asked me to. The night before she died, she came to the lake one last time. She made me promise to look after you, to help you understand that some loves don't end. They just change form, like water turning to mist and back again. Claire felt tears forming in her eyes. I found this in the records, she said, pulling out a folded paper from her pocket. It was a note in her grandmother's handwriting, dated just weeks before she died. My dearest Claire, the lake has always been a place of miracles for our family. When you're ready, it will show you why. Trust your heart, even when your mind questions what you see. And remember, love, like water, finds its own level. All my love. Gran. Lucas read the note, his fingers trembling slightly as they traced Elizabeth's handwriting. She knew you'd come here this summer, knew you'd need someone to help you understand about love and loss and how sometimes the two are the same thing. The song was ending, and the regular lights were coming back up. Claire could see Jason approaching, concern written on his face. Meet me at the lake at midnight, Lucas whispered, already backing away. Bring the records. It's time you knew the whole story. Lucas, wait! But he was gone, leaving only the faintest scent of lake water in the air. The records sat neatly stacked on a nearby bench, but now they were arranged in a specific order, telling a story through their titles. Only the Lonely, Teen Angel, Will You Love Me Tomorrow, and finally, Unchained Melody. As Claire gathered them up, she noticed something else, a small black and white photograph that must have fallen from between the album sleeves. It showed the lake at night, with two figures diving from the dock. The back bore a simple inscription, Some choices echo forever. Midnight. L. Mindy rolled up, breathless with curiosity. Who was that? And why is your hand wet? Claire looked down at her hand, where drops of water marked where Lucas had held it. In the distance, thunder rumbled, promising a summer storm. Just someone who knew my grandmother, she said softly. Someone who's going to help me understand about love. And as she changed back into her regular shoes, Claire realized she'd made her decision about the Sadie Hawkins dance long before Jason could ask again. Some choices were like diving into deep water, terrifying and thrilling and inevitable all at once. Midnight couldn't come soon enough. Thunder rolled across the lake as Claire made her way down to the dock at midnight. The stack of records clutched to her chest. She wore her grandmother's old cardigan, found in the back of the closet, still smelling faintly of perfume and memories. Her portable radio played softly, Spandau Ballet's True, creating a soundtrack for her racing thoughts. The moon slipped behind gathering clouds, leaving only the distant flash of heat lightning to illuminate the water. Lucas was already there, sitting at the edge of the dock. Unlike his usual appearances, he was completely dry, wearing clothes that seemed to belong to 1963, dark slacks and a white button-down shirt that caught the intermittent lightning like camera flashes. You're wondering if you've lost your mind, he said without turning around. Sitting on a dock at midnight with a boy who might be a ghost, or a memory, or something else entirely. Claire set the records down and sat beside him. Are you? A ghost? What do you think? She thought about his wet hair, his mysterious appearances, the way no one in town seemed to know him. But she also thought about his hand holding hers at the roller rink, solid and real. I think you're whatever the lake wants you to be. Lucas smiled. Elizabeth said almost the exact same thing that last night. He picked up the top record, Unchained Melody, and somehow, impossibly, music began to play from it without any turntable. The lake doesn't just keep memories, he said softly. It keeps moments, perfect moments, frozen in time like photographs underwater. Your grandmother understood that. She knew that love doesn't have to end. It just changes form. The storm was getting closer, the wind picking up around them. Why did you wait so long to tell me the truth? Because you needed to understand about love first. Real love. The kind that transcends time. Lucas turned to face her, his green eyes reflecting lightning. The kind your grandmother and I had. The kind you're capable of. He held out his hand, palm up. In it lay his silver chain, the same one Claire had seen in every old photo. Elizabeth gave this to me the day I disappeared, said it would keep me safe in the deep water. He closed Claire's fingers around it. Now it's yours. The first drops of rain began to fall as Claire clutched the chain. Lucas, But he pressed a finger to her lips. Not yet. Some words need to wait for the right moment, like the one coming tomorrow night, at the Sadie Hawkins dance. Thunder crashed directly overhead, and when Claire opened her eyes, Lucas was gone. The record sat in a neat stack, dry despite the rain, with a note on top. Some love stories take decades to reach their perfect moment. Ours is tomorrow. Save me a dance. Tellisa Claire stayed on the dock until the storm passed, the silver chain cool against her palm, understanding finally what her grandmother had meant about the lake keeping its own kind of time. Tomorrow would change everything. But for now, she let the night rain wash away her last doubts, as somewhere in the deep water, a love story 20 years in the making waited for its perfect moment to surface. The Sadie Hawkins dance transformed the high school gym into a neon dreamscape. Paper stars hung from the ceiling, catching the light from rotating colored spotlights. A banner reading, "Forever Young, Summer, 83, stretched across the stage where the DJ played Take On Me by a-ha. Claire stood by the punch bowl in her grandmother's restored prom dress from 1963, pale blue chiffon that seemed to float in the air. Lucas's silver chain hung around her neck, catching the light like captured starlight. "You can't seriously still be waiting for him," Mindy said, adjusting her massive Madonna-style bow. "Jason's been asking about you all night." But Claire barely heard her. She was focused on the clock above the gym door, its hands crawling toward midnight. The lake dredging was scheduled to begin tomorrow morning, a fact that had made Lucas's eyes darken with worry when he'd mentioned it the night before. The music shifted to Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper. The gym doors swung open, letting in a cool breeze that smelled of lake water. And there was Lucas looking exactly as he had in the 1963 photograph, down to the same formal suit and that mysterious half-smile. Whispers rippled through the crowd as he walked toward Claire. Some students stepped back, their expressions confused, as if they couldn't quite focus on him. Others simply looked through him, as though he wasn't there at all. "May I have this dance?" Lucas held out his hand, water droplets falling from his sleeve despite his apparently dry appearance. Claire took his hand, ignoring Mindy's shocked gasp behind her. As they moved to the dance floor, she noticed something strange. The other dancers seemed to fade away, the music becoming distant and dreamy. In their place, she caught glimpses of another dance, another time. Teenagers in 1963 fashions, her grandmother young and beautiful in this very dress, dancing with Lucas under different stars. "The lake is losing its power," Lucas whispered. "The dredging will break its hold on time, on me." "Then stay," Claire said. "Stay here in this time." Lucas pressed his forehead to hers. "Some stories have to end for others to begin. Your grandmother understood that. Now it's your turn." The song reached its chorus as Lucas pulled back slightly, his green eyes intense. "The lake kept me here for a reason, not just for Elizabeth's last request, but for this moment, to show you that love doesn't have to make sense to be real, that some endings are really beginnings in disguise." As if on cue, the power went out. In the darkness, Claire felt Lucas's lips brush hers, a kiss that tasted of lake water and summer storms and 20 years of waiting. When the emergency lights flickered on seconds later, She was alone on the dance floor, but she wasn't the only one who had seen him this time. Around her, students and chaperones whispered and pointed. Mindy stood frozen by the punch bowl, her mouth open in shock. Even Jason had stopped trying to pretend he wasn't watching. On the floor at Claire's feet lay a single photograph she'd never seen before. It showed her grandmother as an old woman, sitting on the dock at sunset. Behind her, barely visible in the water, was Lucas's smiling face. On the back was written, "Some loves guard us forever. Look for me in the deep water." Collects the DJ recovered, starting up Forever Young by Alphaville. But Claire was already running, her grandmother's dress flowing behind her like waves in moonlight. She had one last place to be before morning came to change everything. The lake was waiting. The moon hung full and bright over the lake as Claire ran down to the dock, still in her grandmother's prom dress. Behind her, she could hear voices calling Mindy, Jason, and others from the dance who had followed her, drawn by the night's strange events. The lake's surface was perfectly still, like black glass reflecting the stars. Claire touched the silver chain around her neck, remembering Lucas's words about love changing form but never truly ending. "Claire, wait," Mindy's voice carried across the shore. "What's happening?" But Claire knew what she had to do. She placed her grandmother's old records on the dock, setting Unchained Melody on top. Without a turntable, the music began to play, just as it had before, the lake's own magic at work one last time. She dove. The water was surprisingly warm, like sliding into memories. As she swam deeper, she could hear the muffled sounds of other songs, all the music that had played across this lake for decades, preserved in its depths like amber. Lucas was waiting in the deep water, glowing softly like moonlight through waves. Around him, Claire saw fragments of other times, her grandmother diving into these same waters in 1963, summer nights that had been preserved by love and memory, moments frozen between then and now. "You came," Lucas smiled, reaching for her hand. In the underwater quiet, his voice was perfectly clear. "Elizabeth knew you would understand." "The dredging," Claire started, but Lucas shook his head. "It doesn't matter now. The lake's magic was never about keeping me here. It was about teaching each generation of Henderson women about love, the kind that transforms, that endures, that shows us who we really are." He pulled her close in an underwater dance, their movements creating swirls of phosphorescence around them. "Your grandmother's love kept me here until you were ready to understand. Now it's time for your own story." "But I love you," Claire said, the words creating ripples in the water around them. "You love what I represent, magic, mystery, the romance of impossible things. But real love, Claire, real love is waiting up there." He nodded toward the surface, where flashlight beams now searched the water. "Someone who sees the magic in you, not just the magic around you." Claire heard Jason's voice calling her name, filled with genuine concern. Lucas smiled, touching the silver chain around her neck one last time. "Elizabeth gave me this to keep me safe in the deep water. Now it's yours, not to keep you in the past, but to remind you that love is worth diving deep for, worth taking chances on." He began to fade, becoming one with the water around them. "Thank you for letting me complete my promise to Elizabeth. Now go, live your own love story. Will I see you again?" His laugh rippled through the water like music. "I'm part of the lake now, part of every sunset and summer storm. And as long as there are Henderson women who believe in love," Claire felt herself being pulled upward, the lake carrying her gently to the surface. She broke through into the cool night air, gasping, and found herself looking into Jason's worried eyes as he helped her onto the dock. "Claire, are you crazy? What were you—" He stopped, noticing something. Was there someone else down there? "I thought I saw—" But Claire just smiled, touching the silver chain that still hung around her neck. In the distance, the first light of dawn touched the lake's surface, and she could have sworn she heard the faint notes of time after time drifting across the water. Her grandmother's last gift hadn't been the mystery of Lucas, or even the lake's magic. It had been the understanding that love, real human love, was the greatest mystery of all, worth diving into with your whole heart. "Do you still want to get that orange Julius at the mall tomorrow?" she asked Jason, wringing out her grandmother's dress. His relieved smile was answer enough. Behind them, their friends were gathering on the shore, full of questions about what they'd seen at the dance, about Lucas, about everything. But those were stories for another time. For now, Claire had a new story beginning, one with mall dates and mixtapes, with ordinary magic and real-world romance, and somewhere in the deep water, where love stories never really end, Lucas danced on, keeping watch over a lake where time moved to the rhythm of the heart. Thank you for watching today's story. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel to relive the magic of the 80s every day with our heartfelt stories. May God bless you and your family, and don't forget to click on the video popping up on the screen right now. It's another totally rad story you won't want to miss. See you in the next video, and stay awesome.